Thank you all for being here. This is the second half of the breakout sessions. My name is Luke Lynch. I am the Opportunity Director at United Way of Central Iowa. Opportunity is a collective impact model. It's a plan to fight poverty in our community. And so we have identified eight different areas that we're focusing on that are barriers to people who are living in poverty. And one of those eight areas is housing. And so I'm thrilled to be joined here today by an incredible panel and moderator, and so I'll introduce them and then hand it off. First is Dr. Barbara Bruton. She's on her second tour as an AmeriCorps Vista member. This is just one of many hats that she wears, but she's with the Neighborhood Finance Corp as a Vista volunteer. Then we have Linda Carter Lewis, community activist, longtime. She's the longest serving woman president of the NAACP, and she's on the Civil Service Commission now. Among many other things. Then we have Brianne Bai, who's the executive director of the 6th Avenue Corridor here in Des Moines, to talk about some revitalization happening there. And then Stephanie Murphy, who's the executive director with Neighborhood Finance Corp. And our moderator, and I apologize for my dog barking in the background, that's part of work from home, right? Our moderator here is Lauren Johnson with the Polk County Housing Trust. She's director of communications and community outreach. I'll just say that if you participated in the equity challenge, day 7 was around housing, and it talked about redlining in particular. And so much of this discussion will be around redlining and kind of building off of that discussion. So we're thrilled you're here today. Thank you for participating. And I will hand it off to Lauren.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Luke, and really looking forward to this discussion with such an incredible panel. I don't know that I'm qualified to be the moderator here, but I'm very excited to be. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Just to give a brief overview of what we'll be talking about in the next hour or so, we are going to talk a little bit about the history of housing inequity here in the city of Des Moines and in Polk County, and then talk about efforts to really mitigate those past injustices that have been done specifically to the Black community in the city of Des Moines. And so just to get us started off, a little bit of background. In the past year, the Polk County Housing Trust Fund has been lifting the conversation of housing equity here in central Iowa. In seeing disparities in homeownership between Black and white residents in Polk County uncovered in the One Economy State of Black Polk County report in 2017, and then again in 2020, we decided to dig deeper to better understand how historical policies have impacted this modern reality. Similar to many American cities, the history of housing inequality really begins with the practice of redlining here in the city of Des Moines. And so just a brief overview. Hopefully you all were able to see the content on day 7 that pertained to this information. But when we talk about redlining, we're talking about a policy that was created by the federal government in the 1930s to issue federally backed home loans to families across the country to really help out the banks and also to help out families who were unable to pay their mortgages. And so these loans, of course, were not granted to everybody. They were, the way they assessed risk was by creating maps, and either certain neighborhoods could get access to those loans, and then other areas were completely cut off from access to those loans, which really left those areas on a path towards disinvestment going forward. Many of those areas we now know were determined based upon the race of the residents who lived there in the 1930s. This really set a cycle of disinvestment in 239 cities across the country, Des Moines being one of them, in those specific, what we now call redlined neighborhoods. And so this practice set the stage for many more inequitable and destructive housing policies to take place throughout the 20th century. In Des Moines specifically, the practice of urban renewal and the construction of I-235 plowed right through the heart of a thriving Black community, Center Street. But not only did this practice destroy countless Black-owned businesses, it displaced many families of color in the city of Des Moines. And so without further ado, it really is my honor to introduce Dr. Barbara Bruton, who was really the honorary chair of our committee in which we formed to learn more about the experience through this time in our Undesign the Red Line project, and just to share her story about growing up during this time of change in the city of Des Moines.
Thank you very much, Lauren, for having me. And I definitely want to thank Polk County Housing Trust Fund and Eric and Kendall and all of you guys that, you know, did the research for this project and having the vision for it to roll out this story, because it is an interesting story. And what you see today, there's a story behind that story. And that's me standing probably right where our house was, my grandmother's house. We were on 3rd Street. And I can remember like standing on the hill and looking over at 2nd Avenue and looking at the river. So that was a picture of a story from the Register and Tribune as they were writing the story. So it is an honor for me 64 years ago to be able to talk about how the hurt and the pain of both my grandmother and my father during that time, because I was about 8 years old when we had to move. And not only did I have to move, but I also had to change schools. And so that was quite an adventure for somebody that was that young at that time. And plus, over the years, we had heard so many stories about the city was going to take our house. We would be walking up to church. My grandmother was a member at Corinthian, and she would be talking about the city is going to take our house. And then when she would be braiding my hair, I heard more about those stories. And then one day it actually happened. And she had to move up the hill to 8th Street. And it was not like the house that she had actually had worked so hard to purchase. Between my dad and my grandmother, they owned the house because my father, her husband, had passed when my dad was like 14 years old, and he was the oldest one in the family. So he had to help raise those 4 sisters, and really was quite proud of his mother to be able to have that house and hold on to it. So it was quite a shock to the family when the city did take it and then didn't even give them the money that it was worth at that time. So I had to move to the east, from the east side to um, from the west side to the east side, and it was over in the Logan area where I ran into things like, oh, you're from Crocker School, so you can't be able to do the things that your father says you can do. And see, and then the problem was is that I was up out of my seat talking to people, and my dad said, why are you up out of your seat after the teacher reported it? And I said, well, I was showing them how to read. And the teacher said, she doesn't know how to read. He says, oh, yes, she does. She's been reading ever since she was 4 years old. She has a sister and she taught her how to read. So he said, my advice would be to let her continue to help the other kids if they need it. And in the meantime, the principal was really upset because the teacher had embarrassed him because she didn't necessarily know her student. So I also ran into trouble like that when I went to middle school. Because I was a student from Logan, they put me in the 7-1 grade, and really I could have been in 7-12. And it was another teacher that came to our home and said, hey, why is your daughter in 7-1? And my dad said, what's 7-1? They didn't even know. But anyway, he went back to the school, and I ended up being in 7-12. And then I ran around and started scraping my name off of the honor roll list because my friends were wondering why my name was on the honor roll, and I didn't want that kind of recognition. But the reason I'm telling this story is because neighborhoods are full of richness, and they're full of families that love their children and want their children to even do more things than what they were able to do. And in my background, I not only had my family, but I also had the church, um, Reverend Fields and Mount Olive Baptist Church. You know, they made sure that we did our Sunday school pieces so that we wouldn't be shy when we talked in front of the public or talked to other people, to make sure that we would be able to present ourselves well. The other thing that we had was some teachers that were really concerned about who we were, as well as other neighborhoods. When I think about East 18th Street, which is where the street that I was raised on, there were all of the neighbors. I mean, if you got in trouble with Mrs. Booker, you would be in trouble with your mom. If you got in trouble with Miss Tolson, you'd be in trouble when your parents came home. And then we had people that would pile all the kids into their cars and take them to Sunday school and make sure that they were at some of the events and activities. And that's still going on today. But I share that because some people don't understand that there are resources in the community that can help families that also may need a little bit of support. And that's why I like the work that I do. When he said that I was part of the AmeriCorps Vista, that's what I get to do, is I get to work with families and I get to help. My daughter is 48 years old. So it's like, okay, so who else can I help to mother, or who else can I help? Because I've done that and I am so willing to help. So that, and finally, my connection with Neighborhood Finance Corporation allows me to be able to scan the internet and let's see if there's some homes out there. Let's talk to realtors to see if they want to help families connect with Neighborhood Finance Corporation, because there are good solid homes out there. They may need a little TLC, maybe some improvements, and there are finances available, and some people don't know about that. And that's one of the things that I try to do, not only talk to potential buyers and people that want to do some renovation, but also to talk to the realtors and get them to see, hey, there's a way that we can do this. We're all in this together. We want to improve neighborhoods, and we can do that one family and one house at a time. So it's an honor to be able to work with Stephanie and her crew of great staff that work really hard, getting families sorted out so that they're able to make that purchase and to buy it. So those are the things that allowed me the resiliency to be able to come back to Des Moines, because I ended up going to school in Missouri. I went to school in Missouri because that's where I got the scholarship. But then I wanted to return back home and to work with families and other people in the community that also helped me. Just a way to pay it forward. So thanks again for being able to be part of this presentation.
Well, thank you. And we're all better off for you coming back and for all of your efforts. And so thank you so much. And something that Barbaretta mentioned a lot is the concept of neighborhood, and that's something that we'll be coming back to quite a bit as we go along in this discussion. But keeping on that same topic, I'm excited to now bring into the discussion Linda Carter Lewis to talk a little bit about the neighborhood that she grew up in Des Moines and how she's seen it change over time.
Thank you, Lauren. And I just want to clear up kind of the way Luke introduced me as the longest serving NAACP president. Kind of sounded like, I was still serving, but thank goodness I got that done earlier in my life. And I've been out of the presidency for, a good 9 or 10 years now, but I did serve for 10 years. But my role today is to share with you as a person born and raised in Des Moines. And my mother was born and raised in Des Moines. So I'm very pleased to say that I've never wanted to move anywhere. I would move out of Des Moines. So I'm happy to see all the things that are going on and these organizations that are trying to help in the area of housing, because that is one of my passions. One of the things that really hurts me to my heart to see homeless people who can't afford to feed their families or house their families and that. So I'm very happy to be a part of this panel. When I found out about the Undesign the Red Line group and that exhibit that they have, I found out things that I didn't know about the city and about the redlining and that kind of thing. So that's what brings me into the picture about my story. My parents lived on Southeast 18th and Murray, Southeast 18th and Scott when I was born. And at 6 months, my dad was able to obtain an opportunity to buy a home just 1 block south of Chautauqua Parkway. Chautauqua Parkway was definitely redlined. It was outside of anywhere Black people couldn't buy a home in that area. And many times in a neighborhood, even just a block away. But I think he, and I didn't talk to him about it because I didn't know about it, and he never shared that with us. But I sort of sensed that this gentleman that sold it to my parents was somebody who believed in equality and was willing to sell the house to him, because we were the only Black family there. And shortly after, I think there was another older couple that bought a home on our street before we had a few more come on the block. But at any rate, I was blessed to have that opportunity to be, in a neighborhood where good schools and that kind of thing. But not everybody could at that time. I didn't know why. But at any rate, I grew up there. I spent time, we're going to talk about the 6th Avenue corridor pretty soon, but I was all the pictures are showing of that. I was very, very familiar with that because I went to school at North High School, had to walk down 6th Avenue from Jefferson every day to school. So I'm familiar with that, and I'm glad to see what's happening over there at, on the 6th Avenue corridor. And then with regard to the freeway and the displacement of so many families, especially families of color, while I wasn't directly impacted by that, I was impacted because there were friends, there were other family members that were impacted by it. And everyone was really impacted because it was traumatic for us. It was very disturbing when you saw your loved ones being displaced, having to move from a nice home to a home that wasn't as nice, wasn't as large, or maybe even not be able to get another home. They might have to be in an apartment or something like that. So those were the things that, we saw happen when we were growing up, my sister and I. We had, in those days, there were mom and pop grocery stores on the corners. There were 3 of them near us. And one of them was very friendly, and that's the one we would go to. But if we happened to be near one of the other 2 and we would go to them, they just weren't quite as friendly. They'd follow us or they'd watch us. And when we came to the counter to purchase, they kind of looked at us and tried to see, now did they take something? Are they paying for everything they've got? And that you felt just kind of unwelcome. So we grew up with those kind of things having to deal with because of racism. Let's see. Then the downtown area, what we see going on in downtown Des Moines right now is something I could never have even imagined or dreamed. It is so, so different. There weren't people living down there. People lived on the outskirts, maybe in housing, some apartments, but not in the downtown itself. And now we have so much housing there. It is just amazing. And people all over and downtown is just kind of alive and thriving all the time now. But when I was younger, I took the bus down there every Saturday to go shopping, and we had the department stores and what they called the dime stores and drug stores. And that's the kind of shopping that you did. And it wasn't in a 5 o'clock. It was pretty dead after 5 o'clock. And so, downtown is extremely, just totally different than it used to. I think it's a good thing. I think it's great what they're doing. However, I just would so like to see much more of that housing, some of that housing being affordable for people who are homeless, people who may not be homeless, but they can't afford to pay those rents. There needs to be housing for people who need low rent housing, people who need housing they can afford until they can get their job back or until they can get a better job, because jobs are opening up because people are understanding that this racism that has kept them from getting some good jobs, is no good. That's why I'm so thankful that this 21-day challenge is helping people to understand why we struggle, why we've had a hard time. It's not because we're lazy, but because we don't want to. It's because of the racism. They need to understand, and they need to get a sense of feeling as to what it feels like to be judged just by your looks, just by the fact that you are who you are. And so this forum today, I think, is a great opportunity to help enlighten people so that there will be more people with better understanding, so that this movement that started during the summer will continue, and it will continue to make a difference to all of us in our community, so we can have one of the best communities in all of America. That's what I'm looking for.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I do have going a little bit off script here, but I do have a follow-up question for both Linda and Bobretta. And that just being, after experiencing this displacement or, having a really nice home and then being forced to either move into a smaller home that wasn't as nice, or maybe even being forced into rental housing, how do you think, or do you think that maybe impacted the attitude of those families for generations to come as it pertains to home ownership and housing?
I think it definitely would have caused them to have some trepidation or some concern about trying to buy a house again, not wanting to have to go through that, thinking about what they lost, through no fault of their own, and how they were cheated out of getting the value for their house. If they had been white, they would have gotten that and then some. Maybe they would have even profited by selling their home. They weren't giving an option to sell their home or stay there. That had to be very, very discouraging. And what it did to their children and how it traumatized them had to have lasted for, who knows, maybe another generation, or could have gone 2 generations down. So it was very, very traumatic. As I heard people talk about it, and like I say, I wasn't impacted, but I did talk to people, and I heard families talking about it, and still talk about it, sometimes today. But it was a horrible thing. Sorry, Bobby.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I just go back to the fact that, my dad would always say, and I talk about my dad a lot, but I had a wonderful mother. Let me tell you, I'd never been able to get through grad school if it wasn't for my mother, because she babysat a lot while I was going to graduate school. But my dad, he just wouldn't allow us to think poorly. You got this situation, okay, but you have yourself and you have prayer, so you can get through this. We're poor, but you can't think poorly. You can change this. Nobody can define you. So that's what kept us going. And then if we even thought we were going to slip back into thoughts like that, he would just bring us back to the reality of, yes, but you can do this and you can do that. And if you don't have a good education, you're not going anywhere. So we were required to get a good education. And from that, everything else just rolls out. So, I mean, we could have fallen. I mean, he could have accepted it and then not even tried, but he worked 4 and 5 jobs. he worked a job per child at one time. Now, not only his regular job, but he had all of these other little jobs. I can remember when I was away at school and he had this job on Friday nights where he cleaned up a building. It was just a couple of rooms and he made $10. And then they would send me this $10 money order every week. And that's what I bought pizza with. You know, I could celebrate the weekend because I had that $10. So I don't know. We were just raised differently, and I'm so glad about that because then when I see my students that are having issues, and I'm going, you know what? You cannot let that define you. And I know better because you were in my class. I know what you can do. And so then when I see them, then they finished DMAC or they finished wherever I had them. They're typically finished. And sometimes I would even have their children. I mean, that's how long I've been around. But anyway, yeah. So
Wonderful. Thank you. And so, speaking of kind of a mindset to some of these issues, I think that as we go forward, we all need to have the mindset rather than really doom and gloom of what happened in the past, looking towards how we can build more equitably going forward. And so now we're going to hear about a very, very good example of that from Brianne Bai, the Executive Director of the 6th Avenue Corridor, who's going to really explain everything that they've been doing to revitalize the neighborhood in a way that also builds the neighborhood up and builds wealth in that neighborhood as well.
Thank you, Lauren, and definitely quite an honor to go after Bobby and Linda. I'm just working on sharing my screen a minute. I have a few images that I will show you, hopefully not bore you too much with these. So I am the Executive Director of the 6th Avenue Corridor Urban Neighborhood Main Street Program. We are part of the Main Street program in Iowa. A lot of main streets are your small kind of rural towns. We're obviously not that, and we're not a downtown program. So we focus on 6th Avenue from 235 north to the Des Moines River Bridge. We're a little over 10 years old as an organization. We are a small organization, one staff, but devoted board members comprised of area residents and business owners and various partners throughout the community. And then we have a number of volunteer opportunities and projects that we get folks involved in, and really it is very much has been since the beginning, grassroots kind of led. This is an image I often like to start with. This is 6th and University back in the 1930s. So you can see here how 6th Avenue coming out of downtown was a streetcar. It was a streetcar route, and it went all the way up into the Euclid area. Over here to the left, this is where McDonald's sits now. And over here to the right is where we have a laundromat. So the new Quick Trip's kind of off to your right outside of the screen. Like I noted, we are a corridor. We're a district that focuses on 6th Avenue, essentially on either side of the street. But the impact working in these neighborhoods, certainly the issues and the opportunities and the relationships go beyond any lines on a map. This is our kind of designated state district. And so we go from Mercy and DMAC at the south up north to the Des Moines River Bridge. We're about 1.2 miles. And I am a resident of the district. I've lived here for a while now, and raising 2 kids here. Absolutely love my neighborhood, love living on 6th Avenue. But in doing this work and in working with members of the community, I think a lot about the history of the area, of how this part of the city, in this section right in here, I don't know if you can see my little hand, but it was originally its own city. It was a city of North Des Moines. It was totally separate from downtown Des Moines. It had its own mayor, had its own council, it had its own school district, waterworks, and all of that. And so there's a strong legacy of sort of advocacy and independent kind of spirit of the area that I really think has carried through, even though the area has really seen and welcomed since the early 1900s waves of new immigrants. 6th Avenue was a strong cultural and commercial spine for diverse small businesses. Very much the area was a heart of the Jewish community early on. And we see such a diversity of businesses. This was 6th and Forest in the 1950s. Um, the corridor was really that spine, that where people could connect with opportunities to build their dreams, start a small business, get their first job, come together for some entertainment. This is up at 6th and Franklin, an old filling station. This is that Jewish Community Center over at 9th and College. So 6th Avenue had a number of cultural and certainly economic resources that really, fed through it. This is that redlining map from the 1930s, and so here you can see 6th Avenue was in an area that we certainly need to think about the legacy of the impacts of those policies, and then also the legacy, as Lauren and others have already noted, certainly hearing the stories from Bobby, the legacy of 235 and urban renewal. This is looking north when 235 was under construction, looking north up into our part of 6th Avenue, so north from downtown. And just the changes that those infrastructure and those policy decisions made to our neighborhoods. So this is this was all of 6th Avenue just a few years ago. We are in the midst of a streetscape project. This was the environment of 6th Avenue. So not the environment of the 1930s and 1950s, but over time, 6th Avenue was seen as, well, it's just a way, disinvestment in the neighborhoods. We'll just get cars in and out of there as quickly as possible to downtown. And so over time, instead of it being a thriving streetcar line, comfortable for pedestrians, the lanes grew to 5 lanes, and this was the condition of the sidewalk on either side. Very narrow, interrupted by light poles. Snow would pile up in the wintertime. So we are in the process where we've just finished up phase 1, and we're now in phase 2 of a multi-million-dollar streetscape project that is slowing traffic down, reduce the lanes from 5 to 3, widen sidewalks, incorporated a multi-use trail on the west side so that cyclists and our neighborhood kids can go out. I just love watching kids learn how to ride their bike now along 6th Avenue. Before, you never would have seen that. Here is 6th and College, where we have some new businesses that are now thriving. La Tapatia over here at the corner, we have Good Vibes. I'll show you an image of those soon. Tacos de Familia here is an example of the type of entrepreneurialism that we're really focused on fostering. And so the family is an immigrant family. They've lived in the neighborhood for a number of years, had a catering business, and there was an opportunity to rent this space. They had never owned a brick and mortar business, and they're just absolutely thriving now. And that's exactly the type of business that, as we see opportunities for additional redevelopment, really focusing on infill redevelopment. Nobody wants to see any of the businesses that are already here go away. It's that we have opportunities for definite infill on vacant properties. So as I noted, this project is just fostering an environment for livability, pride, small business development. We got parking now. One of the things I'm particularly excited about is the fact that this streetscape project is bringing over 150 new street trees to 6th Avenue, and trees have such an important psychological and kind of mental health component. So we'll see that on 6th Avenue. And then we've been working with partners to also add trees out in the neighborhood. Stephanie's participated in a tree planting event that we've hosted, and we hope to do that again once COVID is behind us. And thinking about revitalization versus gentrification, for us, to invest in an area, to have the residents who have lived, and we do have a neighborhood that is, these neighborhoods have been transitional. They've had a transitional residency for a number of years. There are apartment buildings, places like that. So listening to the input of people who perhaps are new Americans, new Iowans, maybe they're refugees, and then also those families who have lived in the area for decades and 2 generations, but thinking about very intentional and incremental revitalization and balancing major investments in infrastructure. And for me, that's absolutely stemming from an equity perspective. It is not equitable to have a corridor, a major corridor in our community where people can't safely walk on a sidewalk. Not equitable. But to also then partnering with and supporting, and in properties, we now are a foster parent for a few properties, including as a requirement that there be affordable housing in mixed use developments that are being built on the corridor. Here's an example. So history is also very important to the area, being such a historic part of the city. And when we put out surveys, people mention they love the people and the diversity, and they love the history of the area. And so this is a project where a gentleman purchased this vacant mansion that had been converted to apartments a number of years ago, but it was vacant for a long time. And then with some IFA funds, it is now an affordable housing project focused on primarily on veterans. There's a waiting list, and it's just absolutely a fantastic project, award-winning project as well. This is a project where we're partnering with and working with Jack Hatch and YSS. This is a project that will actually start construction this coming spring, and it will bring a number of units of various affordable housing, and then also working with YSS on youth supportive. So as young folks are aging out of foster care, that they have some access to additional services. But on the ground floor, live work units to be able to incubate new small businesses, and those will also be at affordable rents. So just win-win-win-win. We have, as I mentioned, worked as kind of a foster parent for some properties. So working on, the history, saving those historic buildings that have not already been rehabbed, but also making the way with some buildings that were too far gone. Don't love to demo buildings, but we have demoed a few to make way for some new redevelopment. So bringing in additional spaces for people to build their dreams, and thinking about, as Bobby noted and Linda noted earlier, those relationships within communities, within our neighborhoods. We've invested a lot in working with local artists on temporary and some longer term art projects. We're continuing to do that throughout the corridor. Here's an exciting project where this artist, Sheena Rose, her vibrant artwork that really encapsulates the momentum and just the vibrancy of the area and positivity, will be incorporated in 13 bus shelters throughout the district. So we're really excited about that project, and thinking about also engagement as a way to build pride and to really, revitalization is more about local assets and local voices advocating for change versus outside interests and money kind of coming in and creating the change that they think should be seen. So here we've pulled together a group of stakeholders to choose that artist for the bus shelters. We love hosting community cleanup events with working with kids and businesses. We've hosted Jazz in July and other music events during the summer. We're really excited to get back to that once we're safely able to do so. And here are a few images there from Tacos La Familia. We just, again, love seeing that connectivity where people can go into businesses, interact and meet new neighbors and find their commonalities. Here are some exciting developments. We have Good Vibes Yoga has found a home there at 6th and College, and they actually offer donation-based classes and work with kids on breakdancing and bring in other folks who are doing innovative programming. So we're just thrilled at everything that's going on, and it takes a lot of partnership. We don't always agree on everything. There are sometimes, new ideas and just democracy is messy, and so is community, and that's a good thing. So thank you. Here's my contact information. Happy to visit with anyone further at any time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brianne. And, one really important thing that was touched upon that we'll dive into a little bit deeper is really giving everybody and making sure, being very intentional in making sure that everybody has the opportunity and an equal opportunity to live where they choose to live. That's something that, of course, we as a housing organization talk about a lot. And the 6th Avenue corridor is certainly making that intentional action to ensure that there are those units available and those homes available, more importantly, in that area for the people that need them. And so that's really on a larger scale. So let's look at kind of an individual basis, a house by house basis, and hear a little bit more about what the Neighborhood Finance Corporation has been up to with, of course, their executive director, Stephanie Murphy.
Thanks so much. And this has just been a great panel. Thank you to other people that are sharing about their experiences and what they're doing. So Neighborhood Finance Corporation really came out of the redlining experience and the community coming together 30 years ago, thinking about how they could bring capital to those neighborhoods. And our lending maps over the years, we're a nonprofit mortgage company, and our lending maps really have mirrored those neighborhoods that were listed as a C and a D on the redlining map that Brianne showed, and that if you saw the interactive map on the day for the 21-day equity challenge. So we are a nonprofit mortgage company. We only do renovation lending. So every loan that we do is a purchase, refinance, or a home improvement loan that includes major renovation. The average amount is $20,000 per loan. And every loan that we do also has a forgivable loan with it. And that's through a partnership with the local governments that we work with. So we're truly a partnership between the local financial institutions, the communities that we serve, the neighborhoods, and bringing all the resources together. So in doing that, we have served over 6,800 households and are inching in on $400 million worth of investment in the neighborhoods that we serve in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Windsor Heights. We'll be in Urbandale very soon if you live in Urbandale, and then we are in Cedar Rapids as well. So that's just a little bit about what we're doing. I would say that we started out as part of a larger project that sort of morphed and changed over time in the city of Des Moines, but we originally were just in Des Moines. We were in 5 neighborhoods, moved on to other neighborhoods, but we were part of a larger revitalization effort. And some of those things still continue to this day in the community, and some have sort of changed. But the idea was to bring affordable capital so that people could purchase the homes in the neighborhoods that needed repairs and turn them into a home that's safe, sound, and affordable with a loan product that allows people to earn wealth. And that's what our mission is to create that type of environment. And not every community has it. I mean, I think everybody that's in Des Moines, we think, oh, everybody, but it really is a long-term partnership that has survived.
Well, it's very incredible, and we're so very fortunate to have it in our community. So one thing I want to kind of inquire about a little bit further is a word that you just used, which is affordable capital, and what exactly that means, and how you're building that capital and for the families that utilize these programs.
Yeah, so I mean, it means for our program, I can talk about how it works, and basically what that is bringing together different forms of money. So we have our investors, which is the primary mortgage that people pay on. But then every purchase and refinance loan, instead of people having mortgage insurance, they have a second mortgage at 2% interest. So they're earning equity a lot quicker than with the typical home. Also, every loan has that forgivable loan that helps when you're doing home renovations. Often you don't get a dollar for dollar improvement with doing those renovations right away. So by doing the forgivable loan, it allows people to do those deferred maintenance things that are so important to keeping homes safe. And that money all comes through the local governments that we partner with. And so we're just really looking, and then down payment is another resource that we can provide to people. And we've done over 800 down payment loans in Polk County in the past 3 years. So really looking at ways to build wealth so that people have that. Then we partner with local organizations, Home Inc. and Evelyn K. Davis, because we know there's people with dream of home ownership, and they need that housing counseling or home buyer education so that they can figure it out. Because I talked to so many people who are like, I bought my first home and I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and we really want people to go into it so that they can make wise decisions. And we know, especially with our loan product, because it combines a home purchase along with renovation, it's like a double hard work to do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And now, you know, with the remaining time we have left, I think it'd be best to open it back up to the group for a couple of questions. And one of them being, you know, we've been talking about this intentional action to really revitalize these neighborhoods in a way that builds wealth and that benefits everybody who's involved. And so why is it so important to be taking this intentional action to ensure that everybody really has equitable access to a safe, stable, and yes, affordable place to live? Why is that so important for the community at large? If anyone wants to bite first.
Well, I'll jump. I mean, why it's important is because, you know, I think back to what Bobby was talking about how neighborhoods are so important to our development. And I reflect on, you know, so we want to create places that are safe and stable. And I mean, we have a great community here. We have so much to build off of, and the work that Brianne's doing and other nonprofits in this space as well. So, and I want to just also, I was reflecting as you said that on something that Dr. Laura Morgan Roberts said earlier today, and just that we want to find a place where, you know, you feel included at school, work, or in the community. And that's really our goal, is to create those types of spaces for people in the community.
Thank you. And so just kind of some follow-up questions. What would you like to see done, you know, whether it be new partnerships or new tools of investment? This is once again for the broader group in the coming years to once again make access more equitable. We know that in the past, people have not been able to live where they choose to live, as we heard from Bobretta and Linda's stories. How can we continue to expand that access, not just in the city of Des Moines, but also in the larger metro area in our suburban jurisdictions? Anyone?
I don't want to keep answering, but I'm sure if someone just cut me off. You know, our experience with down payment assistance, that we were able to bring in 2 federal grants and provide that. And that wasn't just in our neighborhoods, that was throughout Polk County. And so people really could take that money and shop where they wanted to, and it created opportunity. So I am a big proponent of down payment assistance combined with home buyer education. Not just education as a hoop to jump through, but is really moving the needle and creating opportunity for people.
I'd love to see more conversation and investment in looking at our historic housing stock, because so many of our neighborhoods in Des Moines, the housing stock is aging. That's just reality. But coming at it from a place of it being an asset rather than a challenge, we have opportunities certainly to think about, rather than, you know, demolishing vacant properties. How can we intersect them before they get to that point where it's kind of demolition by neglect? And how could we perhaps put that home into the hands of a family from an affordable perspective, but also teach people how to maintain older homes, how to invest in the historic integrity of our streets and our neighborhoods, and also continue the policy conversations surrounding accessory dwelling units and which neighborhoods can have those accessory dwelling units. Right now, it's only Sherman Hill. There are a few other neighborhoods that are, I think, moving towards that, but that's a way for property owners to be able to actually certainly make some money off of renting out a space. It adds to affordable options within our neighborhoods, that funds that they could then put right back into their house to maintain it. Older houses, they have their own quirks. I live in one built in 1905. So just thinking about ways that our residents and our neighborhood residents can benefit from versus, you know, an out of town or out of state buyer coming in and really continuing to not put any funds into maybe a house that's been chopped up into 8 units and it's deteriorating and then it's abandoned and then it's torn down. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And to kind of wrap things up this afternoon, and thank you all so much for joining in on this conversation, both the participants and our wonderful panelists here, and United Way and the Greater Des Moines Partnership for facilitating this Inclusion Summit today. And so our last question I'm going to direct here at Bob, Bretta, and Linda. And, you know, we started off this conversation learning from your lived experiences here in the city of Des Moines. What would you like to see and what can we learn from those experiences to pave a more equitable path going forward?
Well, I think what we can learn is, you know, all the things that are going on based on what you've been sharing with us, a lot of good programs. I think this whole inclusion summit that we've had, you know, I'm hoping that and praying that enough people have taken advantage of it and have learned, and from the 21-day challenge, equity challenge, so that we're learning from this, and there will be much more effort put into investing in homes, investing in, like you say, the ones that are falling apart or going, that have some rehab possibilities, so that those could be referred and made available to people who need homes. We've got a lot more people. I mean, we already had way too many people needing homes, but with this pandemic and loss of jobs, we've got even greater need. And somehow I would like to see this build on all that we're learning and all the information you're sharing, and get that information out to people so they know that there's a pathway for them if they can get this information and get an understanding. A lot of it's because they just don't know. They don't know where, they don't know who, and they don't know how. So I've been enlightened. You know, I didn't know a lot of this stuff, but we need that information to get out, and we need to be dedicated to getting the access to homes for the people who need the home, and continue redeveloping our neighborhoods, putting the investments where we can, and where it will make sure that Des Moines continues to grow and stays the great city that it can be and it once was.
I agree with Linda about the pathway, because when I reflect back on my lived experience, health was a main thing. You know, we had access to health. Okay. Now, probably didn't have the greatest insurance policy and all of that kind of stuff, but they made sure that we were healthy. The next thing was education.
Yes.
You know, if you want to get out of the conditions that we're in, you're going to have a good education, because you want to be able to land a good job, just like that. So it's like health, education, employment. If you get that, then you can probably be a homeowner. You know, you're going to have the resources. You're going to be able to save and be able to own a home. Or, as Brianne talks about, the improvements, because home improvements are not cheap. You know, that costs money, and it should, because those people have to take care of a family just like you do. So we're going to have, and you know, Linda, you talked about the equity piece. That equity has to cross all of those areas. I mean,
Yeah.
even if we look at the pandemic, and I probably should not be able to get on this big soap opera thing, but if we look at the pandemic, where it's most difficult to kind of curtail the virus, the health conditions, the home conditions are going to be a problem. And until that is dealt with, we're never going to be able to wipe it out, even if we've got a virus injection of some sort, because those things have to be flattened if we're going to get the pandemic flattened. So that would be my lived experience and also my prayer. My prayer is that every kid has the opportunity that my daughter had. And every time I look at a child that doesn't, then I see my daughter and I think, we got to help. We got to do something. They need the break.
Well, thank you all. We have neared our time here. And I know we could talk forever and I would love to, but the work continues, that's for sure. This hopefully today has, for all of you, been, some of you may know all of this already, and it's just, rehashing stuff that you know, but I think the discussion is good. We're not perfect, but we're trying to get better as a community. And the first is to acknowledge our faults. And so I hope that the overall discussion of the Inclusion Summit has done that. And that we can work together as a community to make sure that we are equitable in all facets. So on behalf of United Way, on behalf of the partnership, on behalf of Polk County Housing Trust and NFC, everybody here, thank you so much for your participation. Contact information, I believe, some of it was listed here today. Others is on the partnership website that you signed up on. But please feel free to follow up with any questions you may have. And again, can't thank you enough for being here and participating in this day. So we will go ahead and close there. Thanks to Lauren for facilitating, and everyone have a great day.